Society tells you that winners never quit and quitters never win. This childhood cliche is actively destroying your net worth. The most ruthless wealth builders on the planet know that strategic quitting is the ultimate growth hack. We are conditioned to double down on losing hands, terrified of wasting the time and capital we have already spent. But clinging to a sinking ship out of stubborn pride is not resilience. It is financial suicide. The trap you are falling into has a name. It is the sunk cost fallacy. This psychological blind spot forces ambitious entrepreneurs and investors to pour good money after bad, defending failing endeavors simply because they cannot stomach the initial loss. You see it in dead-end careers, bleeding startup ventures, and underwater stock portfolios. Recognizing when to fold is a critical, often overlooked skill that separates the stagnant middle class from those who achieve scalable, aggressive wealth. To master this art of the fold, we must study a spectacular failure that transformed into a $27.7 billion triumph. The story of how Slack saved its business will teach you the ultimate masterclass in killing your darlings. Long before it became the communication backbone of the corporate world, the platform was a dying video game. The team was bleeding cash, running out of runway, and staring down the barrel of total bankruptcy. Enter Stewart Butterfield. He and his team had spent years building Glitch, a quirky, ambitious multiplayer online game. They had secured millions in venture capital and poured their souls into the code. But despite their relentless effort, the user base was flatlining. The market was rejecting their core product. Conventional wisdom would dictate that they push harder, market aggressively, and burn the remaining capital to force a breakthrough. Butterfield chose a radically different path. He realized that the ego attachment to the original idea was irrelevant to their ultimate success. The capital was already gone, and no amount of emotional investment could resurrect a flawed business model. According to behavioral economists at the University of Chicago, investors who successfully detached their ego from their initial capital outlay outperform their peers by significant margins. Butterfield embodied this principle, looking past the wreckage of his game to find the actual hidden value. While developing that doomed game, the engineering team had built a scrappy internal messaging tool to coordinate across different time zones. It was a side project, a mere utility designed to solve their own communication bottlenecks. They called it Line Relay. As the primary product crumbled, they noticed that this rudimentary chat system was incredibly efficient, highly addictive, and completely indispensable to their daily workflow. The life raft was hiding inside the sinking ship. Making the choice to pivot required an extraordinary level of intellectual honesty. Shutting down the game meant firing staff, returning unspent capital to investors, and admitting public defeat. Yet doing so freed their remaining resources to go all in on the internal tool. They stripped away the gaming interface, refined the communication architecture, and rebranded it as Slack. That ruthless decision to amputate the failing limb allowed the healthy organism to thrive. But pivoting is not a magic bullet, and the enterprise software market is notoriously unforgiving. When they launched their new product, they were entering an arena dominated by entrenched corporate giants like Microsoft and Cisco. The odds of a failed gaming company disrupting global corporate communications were statistically abysmal. If their new thesis was wrong, the team would face professional ruin and a permanent black mark in the venture capital community. The market, however, immediately validated their ruthless calculation. Because they had solved a genuine friction point in their own workflow, they accidentally engineered a product with massive product market fit. Growth exploded. According to historical data from the venture firm Andreessen Horowitz, the platform reached a $1 billion valuation in just over a year. It became the fastest growing enterprise software company in history, completely validating the decision to abandon their original vision. This exact scenario exposes the fatal flaw in how most people approach wealth creation. You're likely holding on to assets, business ideas, or career paths that are mathematically dead simply because you remember what they cost you to acquire. The market does not care what you paid for a stock. The market does not care how many weekends you spent building a failed dropshipping store. The market only prices current utility and future potential. To apply this to your own financial architecture, you must conduct a ruthless audit of your current endeavors. Look at your investment portfolio, your side hustles, and your primary income streams. Ask yourself a simple, brutal question. If I were starting from zero today, knowing what I know now, would I invest in this specific asset or project? If the answer is no, you're actively suffering from the sunk cost fallacy. Liquidating a losing position is not a failure. It is a strategic reallocation of capital. By cutting your ties to a dying venture, you immediately free up mental bandwidth, time, and liquid cash to deploy into high-growth, scalable opportunities. The pain of realizing a loss is temporary, but the compound interest generated by reallocating that capital into a winning strategy is permanent. This is the psychological armor you must develop to build serious wealth. We must acknowledge that the instinct to hold on is deeply wired into our biology. Research from the journal Science indicates that human beings experience the psychological pain of losing money twice as intensely as the joy of gaining that exact same amount. This phenomenon, known as loss aversion, makes the act of quitting feel physically uncomfortable. It tricks your brain into believing that a turnaround is always just around the corner, even when the data screams otherwise. Overcoming this biological trap requires a systematic framework for decision-making. You must establish hard, stop-loss limits, not just in your brokerage account, but in your entrepreneurial pursuits. Set clear, measurable milestones for your project. If a side hustle does not generate a specific return on investment within a defined time frame, you kill it. You take the lessons, you extract any useful tools you built along the way, and you pivot immediately to the next asymmetric opportunity. The echoes of that initial failure never truly faded for the team, but they served as a protective shield because they had already survived the worst-case scenario of a public shutdown. They operated their new venture with a fearless, aggressive agility. They understood that their greatest asset was not their original idea, but their capacity to adapt to real-time market feedback. This mindset transforms a fragile ego into an anti-fragile wealth-building machine. Imagine the leverage you gain when you stop defending your past mistakes. You stop being a victim of your own history and become the architect of your future. Every hour you claw back from a stagnant project is an hour you can invest in mastering a new financial instrument, building a scalable digital asset, or networking with high net worth individuals. Your time is your most finite, depreciating asset. Do not waste it subsidizing a sinking ship. Naturally, this strategy carries its own distinct risks. There's a fine line between strategic quitting and chronic commitment phobia. If you abandon every project at the first sign of friction, you will never push through the inevitable dip that precedes exponential growth. The key differentiator is data. You do not quit because the work is hard. You quit because the objective market data proves that the unit economics or the foundational thesis are fundamentally broken. You must learn to separate temporary market volatility from a structural collapse. A bear market dragging down a fundamentally sound index fund is a reason to buy more, not a reason to liquidate. But a proprietary business model that fails to attract paying customers after multiple iterations is a structural collapse. Your job as an intelligent investor is to ruthlessly analyze the difference, cutting the dead weight while fiercely holding on to assets with proven long-term viability. The Butterfield maneuver is a masterclass in this exact distinction. He did not quit technology. He did not quit building software. He simply quit the specific vehicle that was failing to deliver results. He extracted the one piece of infrastructure that had proven utility and discarded the rest. This modular approach to business and investing allows you to salvage the most valuable components of a failure and recycle them into your next massive success. The financial reward for this level of strategic clarity is staggering. In 2020, just over a decade after the team pivoted away from their failed video game, the enterprise software giant Salesforce acquired the platform for a staggering $27.7 billion. By refusing to let their ego dictate their business strategy, the founders engineered one of the most lucrative software acquisitions in modern history. They turned a guaranteed zero into generational wealth. This level of success is not reserved for the Silicon Valley elite. The mechanics of the pivot apply directly to your personal balance sheet, whether you're rebalancing a retirement portfolio, shutting down an unprofitable freelance gig, or walking away from a real estate deal that no longer pencils out. The underlying math is identical. The faster you realize a loss and redeploy your capital, the faster you accelerate your trajectory toward financial independence. We are rewriting the rules of engagement for modern wealth creation. You are no longer bound by the outdated notion that persistence alone guarantees prosperity. Blind persistence is the enemy of strategy. Intelligent wealth building requires you to be fiercely loyal to your ultimate financial goals, but entirely promiscuous with the vehicles you use to get there. If a vehicle breaks down, you do not sit in the driver's seat hoping it magically repairs itself. You get out and find a faster car. The story of how this communication giant saved its business is your permission slip to walk away from anything that no longer serves your financial growth. Embrace the pivot. Respect the value of your own time and capital enough to stop throwing them into black holes. When you master the psychology of quitting the right things at the right time, you clear the runway for the kind of aggressive, scalable wealth that others only dream about.